All right, awesome. Great to meet you, Brian.
Great to meet you
So
too.
I wanted to get started with the movie's so unique and it covers so many different genres. So what was the sort of first thing that that caught your interest, like to tell this specific story and the way it kind of plays out?
This story started as an Amazing Stories episode, and so those were all designed to feel like Amblin movies of the 80s. And as we were trying to push it through the process and it wasn't getting any traction, I just thought like this should be a movie. And as we were developing it with Steven Spielberg, his notes, because we kind of came in with the one sentence pitch and said, it's about a little girl who hires a hitman to kill the monster under her bed. His feedback was all about the psychology of Aurora's relationship with her monster and the connections between the two and the importance of that emotional reality for her. And sitting there listening to his notes and his feedback, sitting in his office next to the sled from Citizen Kane, uh, I was I was like, okay, I need to direct this story because an undeniable toy box of, you got a monster, you've got a mix of genres, and both Mads Mikkelsen and I are big Bruce Lee fans who were very impactful. Who was very impactful for both of us as we were like discovering exploitation movies of the 70s and those sorts of influences. So it started to go from an Amblin entertainment kind of brand to also a variety of different 70s exploitation movies, whether that's black exploitation or kung fu movies. And it started to become this soup of inspirations that I just wanted to dig into.
Yeah, and I mean, it's just so cool how it all plays out. But and because a lot of the beginning of the movie, you're not sure whether what she's seeing is real or not, and the other characters are sort of in the same boat. So what kind of led to the Dust Bunny specifically, that creature, that specific design? What was it like? Are you Did you go through multiple different potential monsters, or did you have this pretty early on?
It when the rubber hit the road, I remember when I was writing the script and talking about the monster, um, I wasn't entirely sure what it would look like. And I didn't want to over describe it because I was like, okay, this is going to evolve. So I wanted to be fairly like loose in the description and the movie. And when we got closer to a possible production and we had to start designing a monster, I was like, okay, I want to reach out to one of my favorite comic book artists, John Wayshak, because if you don't know his work, it's insane. There's madness in all of his characterizations. And there was a certain madness to the expression of the bunny. So I called John and I said, I'm doing a monster movie. Would you like to design a monster? And he was like, absolutely. What does it look like? And I was like, well, it's part Highland cow, it's part piranha, it's part hippopotamus, and it's all bunny. And he went off and drew our bunny. And there's actually have one of his original drawings of the bunny. What did I do with it? Is it over here? I put it. Anyway, it's over there somewhere where like you have like he just kind of amalgamated all of those influences in a way that was cute and deadly and had this wonderful little underbite that gave it an immediate characterization and also the ability for me to project onto it like a bulldog. And it was both scary and cute, and that was very important to be representative of this little girl's imagination of what a monster would be.
Yeah, no, I mean, the design is so incredible. And I was also curious, Because a lot of time, I mean, the CGI is obviously fantastic, but how much are you using CGI versus how much are you using practical effects to kind of realize the bunny, and this, especially in sort of like that third act when it's like close quarters combat?
If you see just the head and the hands, chances are it's the puppet.
Mm.
Which we built this fantastic, the wonderful folks at Legacy Effects built this amazing uh, puppet that's as taller than I am. Its head, and then its ears are as tall as I am, and I'm like, pushing 6'4" on top of its head. So it's this like 12-foot tall puppet with the ears, and so we if you see the head and the teeth, and there are scenes when the bunny is coming up from underneath the bed, that's the puppet, as well as like guys in green suits like lifting up the bed, and if you see the full body, that's CG.
Oh, awesome! And I mean, it looks so good. And then you worked with Mads before, and then now you're working with him again. What was it about? Like, because I believe it's your feature film debut, so it's like, what was it that you wanted to bring him aboard to this project? What piqued his interest in like playing the hitman? Because he's so good at these kind of roles too. And then what's your kind of working collaboration?
Well, I think my biggest instinct was he's Mads Mikkelsen,
Mm.
and we've seen him in so many roles where he's playing the sort of like villain of, whether it's a James Bond villain or an Indiana Jones villain or a Marvel villain. And there was something about these qualities where you would automatically assume, because of the sort of steely European aesthetic, that he's going to be a baddie. And knowing him as a human being and knowing his boyish charm and his affability and his accessibility as a man and a father and a grandfather, and how important family is to him. There were qualities about the person I know that I wanted the audience to see. So there are scenes with him and Sigourney where he's got, particularly out in the elevator, like right before everything goes nuts in Act Three, where he has such an intense likability and accessibility, and the ability to convey deep emotions, that I I wanted to play with the colors in the Crayola box that we didn't get to use on Hannibal.
Yeah, and but you also like when you're balancing like you have the action, you have the horror, but there's also this fantastical element because you have a young girl at the center of the story. I think Sophie plays Aurora. So what was the most challenging aspect for you kind of to nail that tone? It's like this is ultimately from her POV, she's the main character, while all these like sort of like, badass characters are sort of around her.
Working with Sophie was such a delight. We both had the same amount of experience making movies, which is none. And what was really important for me is for her to have a great experience making this movie, and preserving her childhood and protecting her childhood. And one of the smartest hires on the production that we made was Lena Cruz, who was sort of acting coach slash concierge and translator to the adult world for Sophie to have. And Lena was a former child star. She was kind of Danish Jodie Foster, had like a big successful movie in Denmark when she was a little girl, and has gone on. She still acts, but she's also an acting coach and works a lot with kids. And there's something about um, when I told her about this story, she was like, okay, whether it's me or somebody else, it's so tricky for a childhood to be in this, or for a child to be in this adult world and navigate it, and the assumptions that you make. And, you know, there may be a situation where if you give a child actor an adjustment in a scene, they may interpret that as they failed. And so I wanted to create a bubble around Sophie that was going to allow her to be a child and have fun, but also be a professional. And that bubble was Lena Cruz.
Awesome. And I don't want to keep you too long, but you've made so many great television shows. Now you made this great movie, but like, was there anything specific that you learned differently when you're making the movie versus the TV shows that you've run, versus TV episodes that you directed, and the show being a showrunner, and then compared to like now that you're directing Dust Bunny, and was there anything specifically different that happened that you did not anticipate?
What I didn't anticipate was the intimacy of the experience because when you're a showrunner, there are a constant barrage of fires that you're putting out, and you can't really be present for any one thing because you're sitting in the production meeting, and then immediately after that production meeting, you go into post and you're editing, and immediately after that, you're going into a casting session. Then immediately after that, you're running home to rewrite a scene that may be shooting tomorrow. And, with a movie, there's one story that you're telling. With a television show, there's eight, there's 13, there's, 22, there's 24, there's a, a lot of things that are coming at you without an end in sight. And by the time you get to the end, you're you're kind of limping across the finish line. But with a movie, as a director, what was so wonderful is the collaboration with the department heads. I was very, very fortunate to be working with Nicole Whitaker as a cinematographer who taught me so much about directing and was the perfect partner for me as a first-time director, and not only held my hand through the process, but taught me so much about the process. And also was just a great hang. So, my friendship with Nicole is very important. My friendship with Olivier Benoit, who's one of our wonderful costume designers, he and Catherine, who had collaborated before. Catherine did all of Sigourney's costumes and has been working with Sigourney since 1987 in Gorillas in the Mist. And Olivier was her protege. And now Olivier was doing everybody else in the movie. So all the fantastic Sheila Tim costumes, all the crazy shit that Maz was wearing throughout the picture was all from his French maximalist personality. And so I think the thing that I learned and loved about directing a movie, and that was intoxicating, was the ability to be present on set, surrounded by people who had my back and were elevating my work and allowing me to do good work.
Awesome. Well, you did an amazing job, man. No, I
Well,
love the
thank
movie.
you.
So thank you so much for your time, Brian. I really appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Thank you for taking the
Thank
time.